I was blessed. God blessed me in ways I did not realize until I was grown.
I know that you are from Philadelphia.
I was growing up in a part of North Philadelphia called Nicetown, Tioga. I guess in the urban terminology, it is a transition neighborhood.
Okay.
People are moving from the quote-unquote inner city toward what would be Germantown. I'm a product of Philadelphia Public Schools, K through 12, and public college for that matter of fact too. I think my childhood was boring. I think Nikki Giovanni said it best in one of her poems where she said, "I didn't know I was poor until someone told me."
Aww. So, best friend growing up, grade school?
Well, I didn't really have a best friend. What I did have, if you ever saw the movie Cooley High, I had three best friends. Three of us, three or four of us. We hung around together. In fact, we actually formed a rock and roll band. We actually played music for 3 years together.
Guitar player or singer?
I was a drummer.
Drummer!
Drummer and singer. So we formed a band called Marquise of Soul, and we basically did covers. We did the Temptations and the Four Tops and the James Brown and all that kind of stuff. We played block parties and school dances. In fact, oddly enough, we actually played college dances too. And one of the college dances I met a woman that almost became my future wife.
Okay, we'll go down that story a little bit.
Accident, but yeah, and that's what I did. I played football in high school, and I tried out for the basketball team. And I don't know, those out there probably know John Chaney. John Chaney was the coach at Temple. He was also the coach at my high school and college. John Chaney said, "Mr. Smith, we love your enthusiasm, but..."
Not a basketball player?
All I could do was dunk. But that was because I was a high jumper and a pole vaulter, so of course I could jump up in the air. But it was fine. He was fine. He was nice about it. He still became a mentor. Then I graduated high school and decided to go to college. And I had a unique situation. I actually had college credits before I started college.
Really?
I was in a program called Project Upward Bound. And so I had college credits, but it also gave me a glimpse into why I didn't want to go to Temple. I had a full ride to Temple University. Most of us did,
Wow.
But there were some problems, and we saw the problems. And I had a choice. I had to graduate from college. There was no, and I wasn't a basketball player. I wasn't a football player. I wasn't a track athlete. I wasn't an athlete to the point where I was going to get a scholarship. The only way I was going to get in was by polishing the chairs in the library.
Wow.
Meaning I had to study a lot.
Yeah.
And I knew this.
Okay. So where'd you go to school?
So I went to school at a school called Cheney. Now it's called Cheney University, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
At that time it was called Cheney State College. It is the oldest African American college in the nation. It was formed in 1837.
Wow.
So it was a case. Some people ask me, well, why didn't you go to Temple? Well, there was a curious thing happening at a Temple. Black students only made it to the second year. And then they began flunking out, or they began losing their money and everything like that. Decided I couldn't gamble.
Wow.
I could not gamble. At that time, my mother was recovering from her third stroke. And said,
Oh,
nope,
I'm so sorry.
I can't. Well, she lived until she was 72. But I realized that I had to graduate. There was no ifs, ands, or buts.
Okay, went to college. What'd you study?
My undergrad degree was in secondary year social studies. I had a triple major: history, political science, and economics.
And what were you thinking you wanted to do when you were getting that degree?
I was going to be a teacher.
Okay.
I was coming out to teach school.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. I loved it.
How long did you teach school for?
Next to no time.
Yeah.
Well, I did student teaching. In fact, I often laugh. Cheney required you to teach school in two places.
Okay.
We had to teach school in the city and teach schools in the suburbs.
Oh.
So I taught school at a place called Ballackinwood. The cheapest home in 1971 in Ballackinwood was $750,000. And then I taught at the same high school that I attended. So 4 years later, I come back as a teacher. That was interesting.
Oh, All right, so you student taught, but you decided you weren't going to teach?
Well, what happened was, I started looking for a job, went into a room. The room had 300 people in this room. It was a big stage, big auditorium. All of them were African American, and they all had a college degree, and most of them had my degree, meaning a degree in education.
Okay.
No jobs. It was strictly no jobs, and not a job that I wanted to do.
Okay, so what did you decide to do then?
Move here
And why did you move here?
because I was actually going to California.
That's right, I remember hearing that, I think, on
I was going to California, but only had enough money to make it to Milwaukee. My mother said, I can get you to Milwaukee because I had an aunt and uncle here.
Okay.
So I got here and found the job working for the county, and then the rest is history. I met my wife and decided to stay here.
Okay, so tell us the story of how you met your wife.
I met my wife on a bus stop. Outside of MATC, I was, in fact, one of the rare times I did not walk home.
Okay.
And I met my wife, and she didn't like me. Then I met her a second time on the bus. She didn't like me.
You're persistent.
No, actually, I wasn't. That was a problem. And then the third time, my son's godmother and I were invited to a party. And we went to this party, a mutual friend, and she walked into the kitchen, and God said, look, I'm giving you 3 strikes for this. Will you please marry this? Little voice said, that's the one.
And so you asked her out and she actually said yes?
I didn't ask her out. I invited her to a barbecue at the house.
She obviously decided she liked you then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she had a daughter. She had been married before, and I had a daughter. Because I had been, remember I told you earlier, I met a girl when I was playing ball. I met her later as a freshman.
Okay.
And we were going to get married. And we had all these plans and everything. They didn't work out, but it is what it is.
Okay, so your daughter at that time was how old?
Yeah, I think it might have been, she was living in Pittsburgh. I think she was about 5.
Okay, so she wasn't here.
No.
And forgive
no.
me, what is your wife? I know your wife's name. I should know
Linda.
this. Thank you.
Linda.
I should have known that. Okay.
Linda.
And Linda's daughter was how old?
7, I think.
Okay, so pretty close. So the girls were pretty close in age.
Yeah, but they didn't know each other.
Okay.
They didn't know each other. In fact, that's another story. They didn't know each other. In fact, I had not seen my daughter, period, because at the time, men did not have rights like they do now.
Oh, gosh.
So she was adopted by another person and never saw her again for 25 years.
I'm so sorry. Oh. All right, so Linda and you.
So we got married and went to, playing house, so to speak. We were living in a little tiny 2-bedroom apartment. And that was my first step with the city of Milwaukee. I got a job in the city of Milwaukee. I was working for the county first, but we had a disagreement. The county said that I couldn't apply for a higher job because the union had cut a deal with the federal government that said that, okay, I came to work for the county through CETA, which was an employment program.
Okay.
But they said the CETA time would not count as seniority. Yeah, the union cut a deal. They actually cut a deal, and I actually saw the deal later on because I was a union steward.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
It was okay, Carol. It wasn't as bad as you think because it made me look for a new job, which I did. So I started working for the city for the next 4 years. Enjoyed it. It was fun.
And what did you do when you were at the city?
Well, that stint, I started working with rent assistance. Later on, I was a loan officer. In fact, I lent money for what is now Brewers Hill.
Okay, so you were with the county for a couple of years then?
Right, for 3 years with the county. Then I left and went to the city for 4. But then I got taught a valuable lesson. Politics of municipal government. I supported the wrong mayor candidate. And I got laid off. I worked 3 years for the Boys and Girls Club. If I have a choice again, I think I'd do it again. I managed their job training, placement, and education programs.
Okay.
So I was in all 4 units. I used to come out here. I came out here a bunch of times, not to this place, but
Right.
for seats to talk to companies about hiring kids and young adults. Oh yeah. I remember most of this didn't even exist. I remember it was woods out here. I was telling Tina, I actually have a map of a Mequon that shows that what is now buildings was nothing but forest.
Well, in Brookfield, I mean, Blue Mountain Road there was nothing,
Yep.
maybe a hotel and, yeah, but this is not about Brookfield, this is about you.
You had
yeah.
no hunting signs out here. That shows you
Oh
how
my
far
gosh.
back it was.
All right,
So I did that, but I ran into an impasse. Impasse was Sandra, my oldest daughter, was about to start college,
Okay.
and I realized that I needed a job that paid a lot more money than the Boys and Girls Club paid, and had benefits.
Okay.
So I went back to the city again.
What was your function? What
I
did you
began
do?
working for the housing authority in the city of
Okay.
Milwaukee. So I've managed every kind of brick and mortar building that you can imagine, from high rises to complexes to single family homes.
You have done so many different things. It is just amazing.
It was fun. But I did that for about 7 or 8 years, and then I realized that in order for me to go forward, I need to go back to school.
Okay.
So I went back to school and got a master's degree in business administration. I already had what was a couple of credits short of a degree in business and accounting from MATC, but decided not to pursue that because, again, my mentor, who was the deputy controller, said, "Hey, get your master's degree first.
Okay.
That's the most important degree right now," and I did. And she's right, because the minute I got my master's degree, in fact, I was in the process of defending my thesis, my income doubled.
Wow.
I'm gonna tell you a story about my favorite Mayor Maj story. Snowstorm in 1978. That was the last time when the city shut down the city, right? So I was working for rent assistance. This little old lady walks in, literally speaking, little old lady with the cane, whole yard, who spoke this much English. In fact, we used to have to get a guy from the 3rd floor who spoke Polish, who could translate German. Well, end of the night comes, buses have cut off. We're like, how am I gonna get this lady home? She lived on Prospect Avenue. So we're talking, and the mayor bodyguard comes to see, what's wrong? I said, we got a lady here, she's 85 years old. It's a snowstorm and no buses. How are we gonna get her home? Mayor said, I'll take her home. So he takes the lady in his car, because Mayor drove around with his car and two unmarked police cars. So that's how Mayor Maj drove around. Took her home, walked to the door, made sure she was safe. When I moved here in 1975, Milwaukee had a virtual null murder rate. The difference is people were all working. You had jobs all over the place. Mm-hmm. You had a job, you could buy a house. You could buy a cabin up north, no matter what your color. You could take a trip down south, or you could take a trip someplace. You went from that kind of security to total insecurity in a stretch of over 20 years. And what happens when that happens, that's when people begin doing bad things. They're missing security. They really are. I mean, that guy at 30th and Beecher is as frightened as that person at 3rd and Wright about what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay? They don't. And I don't just mean economically, because part of security is also feeling that you know where everything is. Right now, we're studying the book of Proverbs.
Okay.
And there's a in the, I think it's in the 29th chapter. There's a thing that talks about when a man feels safe, he feels giving.
Jeez.
Once he will get secure, the rest is easy. My greatest prayer is that whoever gets mayor, I'm rooting for Cavalier, but that the council allows him time to put things in place. Okay? Do not expect everything overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. But they have the ability right now to shift gears and also I pray that he sees himself as the mayor of the city.
I just assumed you've been a minister for a really long time, but you shared you've only been a minister for 15 years.
That's correct.
Share with us that story.
I got a call. Literally speaking, I got a call. I had been doing things. I had actually technically preached once. I was asked to speak at a Lay Day event. I don't call it a sermon, but I just was asked to speak, so I did. But literally speaking, the boss says, "I think it's time. I think it's time for you to make that next step." I was a business manager for what was then called Building and Bridges.
Okay.
It was all the city trades.
Oh.
And I saw and I decided that I wanted to take the financial end of things a little further. So the only way I could do that was to go work for the controller's office.
Okay.
But the positions that paid equivalent of what I was making as a business manager, you had to be a CPA.
Just about ready to complete your CPA.
I was about 6 credits away from finishing, and on June 25th of 1996, the church caught fire. So I get a call from one of the trustees. I'm driving down Center Street, and the church is ablaze.
Oh.
But don't frown, because again, God does things in his own way.
Right.
That was a blessing, and let me tell you why. It's a 200-year-old church. At the top of the 200-year-old church, the church steeple was a 3/4 of a ton iron cross. We found out that the church steeple was termite infested. It was one good wind gust, and it would have crashed onto Center Street.
Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine what would happen if that hit a bus?
No.
Or a car?
Wow.
Or a kid, or a woman with a stroller, or kids.
Yeah.
So, in his own way, he said it's time to build a new church.
Yeah.
And it took us a little while to do this, understand? We had to clear the land and do all that stuff to do. So by the time we got finished, I decided, well, no more CPA. I'll do something else.
And you had shared with me earlier that your wife had said early on, had said she wasn't interested in being a preacher's wife.
That's correct. She had warned me of this. She warned me of this before we got married, even. Especially after talking to the church's founder's wife. Yes.
And obviously that all changed because here you are, you said 15 years ago?
Yeah, 15 years ago,
Okay.
I finally accepted the call to become a minister. And, she was okay with it. She realized that it was going to take adjustment because again, it's a difference going from just being a quote-unquote lay person, even a church officer, and then taking that next step. I'm not ordained yet. And that's another step. I'm working on that now.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And I know your current church here in Milwaukee had a flood recently, but you had
Yes.
shared you had another church that had a flood, so.
Well, this church had 2 floods.
Oh, it's the same church had
Same
two floods,
church.
okay.
We lost a 6-inch line coming into the church. Take a step back. We built the church slab on grade
Okay,
because we wanted it to be completely accessible to handicap and elderly.
okay,
We made a decision not to have a basement because a basement meant elevators, and in order to accommodate wheelchairs, particularly motorized wheelchairs, not just any wheelchairs, but motorized wheelchairs, it was a big expense. We said it's cheaper just to build a church on one level. We had the land, so we built the church on one level, so that everything in the church is acceptable.
Okay.
It's designed so that there's no barriers for anyone. We designed the whole church to be a community resource.
okay.
It was envisioned that it would be used for job fairs, be used like During the pandemic, it was used as a place for people to get shots
Wow.
and get tested.
How smart. I mean, the foresight of how you did that.
Yeah.
So.
We're about to redesign it again. It's we had a flood, took out our kitchen, but we're redesigning the kitchen now so that we can support a food pantry.
All right, so I've asked a bunch of questions. What kind of things do you want to share with people who will someday see this who have never had the pleasure of getting to know you?
That I've been blessed. I've been blessed in ways that you just can't count. For example, I worked for the Department of Public Works. Well, I worked for the Housing Authority. And in the process of working for the Housing Authority, I worked for something called scattered sites.
Okay.
Well, at that time, the city owned 650 pieces of property all over the city.
Okay.
As far south as 13th and College, as far north as Good Hope Road, as far west as 105th and Lancaster, and as far east as a lake.
Thus called scattered sites. Okay.
But it gave me a chance to see the city of Milwaukee in a unique point of view, to see all the city. So I don't see the city as south side, north side. I see it as the city. One of the managers who was my equivalent in the city, in Department of Public Works, his name was Justin Godfrey. Justin said, Earl, I want to invite you to Toastmasters. And so I come home, wife says, where you going tonight? I'm going to a Toastmasters meeting. What's that? He says, I don't know. I think it's a drinking club. And she laughed too. She said, okay, just, be careful. Again, going to a drinking club at 6th and Chase.
Yeah.
in 1995. So I got there and realized that it wasn't. It's a wonderful program. I highly recommend it, particularly for new managers.
Yeah.
It
Toastmasters.
is a
great
resource that is unparalleled. But because of that and other things, again, I not only did I get to know surrounding city managers, but I got intimate contacts within the city, within Public Works, in fact. So all the managers in Public Works at that time were member Toastmasters. And I learned relationships are so important. And I also see things I see relationships crossing county lines. I see them, right now I belong to Brookfield, but I also belong to Germantown and Mequon, Thingsville. And it's taught me again the value of relationships to get things done, and in business and as well as personal. I also believe that you need to always see the other person's point of view. You don't have to like it. People think you have to like it. No, you don't. But you have to understand it. I've spent my life trying to understand that. Even if the person is opposing to me, someone like a Ku Klux Klaner or neo-Nazi, as well as a person that's another minister. I even, I have not a friend, but I have an acquaintance who is an atheist, staunch atheist.
Wow.
But I try to understand his point of view too, because again, there are things in his life that, even though he is an atheist, I laugh sometimes because there are certain things that we all share, that we all consider what's right, and he believes that. He doesn't like to believe that it comes from God, but he does. There's something else too. I grew up in a neighborhood that had every kind of religion you can think about. There was a mosque, there was a synagogue, United Methodist, Christian Methodist Episcopal, after the Methodist Episcopal, Pentecostal, Baptist, Kingdom Hall, and later on they had a Buddhist temple too. That was after I left to go to college.
No Catholic?
Yes, and Catholic, Holy Souls Catholic Church. And so the kids, like I tell people, I've celebrated lit with Catholic kids and Ramadan with the Muslims and Yom Kippur with the but it also taught me that the only difference was that we all see God from a different point of view, but he's still God. We all have the capacity to get along. It has nothing to do with your religion, it has nothing to do with your color, it has nothing to do with your gender or anything else. It's simply God gave us the ability to get along. He did. He you know, he just mandated that we get along through different roads. But again, we share the same values, believe it or not. You know, the guy in Baltimore or the guy in Milwaukee, the woman in Milwaukee, we share the same values. We just don't know it. We refuse to I should say we refuse to acknowledge it. That's the better word to say. And if I was the same thing to anybody, if they saw this in the future, make it a point of getting excited every day about their ability to find that out.
Thank you so much, Earl. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.